the most ruthless speculator history has ever seen, Rome's richest man, Marcus Licinius Crassus. That is your name. And today, you will learn how money and fear are one and the same poison. You are the son of one of Rome's most powerful families. Your father's name is Publius Licinius Crassus, a senator. He takes his own life rather than be taken prisoner in battle. Your brother also dies. The civil war waged by Gaius Marius and his ally Cinna brings everything to an end. They seize your family's property. By the time all this happens, you are 28 years old, possessing a sharp mind and great strength. But what you've been through is far from easy, and you no longer feel as strong as you once did. Staying in Rome is dangerous. You can't stay here any longer. You realize this too, which is why you're fleeing to Hispania. You hide in a cave by the sea. For 8 months, this cave becomes your home without seeing the sun, without seeing anyone except a few slaves who bring food from outside. A man who has lived in the dark for 8 months no longer fears the darkness. A man who's willing to risk everything to survive no longer fears morality. You don't fear it either. The cave doesn't soften you, it hardens you. There, in that darkness, you realize something. The world belongs to those who show no mercy. You have no more time for mourning. You have no time to think of your father. You have no time to think of your brother. Your thoughts have only one direction: to return in greater force, to take it all back. When you emerge from the cave, you have nothing. You must start over from scratch, from zero. But you have one thing in your mind. You know how Rome works. You know the inner workings of the system, its breaking points, where people panic. You join Sulla's army to seek revenge and shed blood. Sulla wins, and the winner rewrites the rules. The property of Sulla's enemies goes up for auction. Prescriptio, death lists. Once a man's name is on the list, his blood is deemed lawful to shed. His property passes to the state, and the state sells it cheaply, very cheaply, because no one wants to buy a prescriptus's property. It looks like a cursed house. Neighbors stay away out of fear, but you want it. You take it, all of it. That's how the system works, and you read the system perfectly. Your first fortune begins this way. It's not moral, but in Rome, morality is a weapon, not a rule. You draw it when needed, sheathe it when needed. Everyone in the city is corrupt. The difference is this: some refuse to accept it, others turn it into a tool. You belong to the second group, then you discover the fires. Rome is a city of wood. Fires break out, often in the middle of the night, in narrow streets, in insula leaning against one another. The state has no fire department. When a fire breaks out, the neighborhood burns, and neighbors are left helpless. They shout in the streets, carry buckets, and then everything turns to ash. You form a team, a trained fire brigade of 500, but you don't go right away. It burns for a while. You watch the smoke rise into the sky. Then you go, with calm steps, like a man in no hurry. You make an offer to the building owner, to the panicked man. You stand in front of the house as it burns fiercely and name a price far below its true value. If the offer is rejected, you keep the team waiting like spectators. The man screams, begs, the neighbors watch. If it's accepted, you put out the fire. Then you take ownership of the property. You have him sign the deed the same day. He's too shocked to object. Fire is your best negotiator. This is a business model. Brutal, systematic, effective. You invest your money in construction. Slave architects, slave craftsmen. You build a new one in place of the building that burned down. A bigger one, a more profitable one. You become a partner in silver mines. You buy farmland, land from Pontus to Sicily. You rent out educated doctors, secretaries, teachers, actors. Profit in every transaction, a new transaction with every profit. Money begets money, and you keep this cycle spinning endlessly. Your power continues to grow with every penny you earn. You're making money even while you sleep. By one estimate, your fortune exceeds 8,000 talents. You could finance the entire Roman army out of your own pocket for years. The state is more powerful than you, but its treasury is not larger than yours. You are 40 years old. You have no rivals. Plutarch describes you this way: the truly wealthy person in Rome is one who can sustain an army with his own money, and you can truly do that. This is a unique kind of loneliness, a peak that no one else can understand. As you gain power, you find yourself wanting more and more. You become greedy without even realizing it. But wealth alone isn't enough. It never has been. Because in Rome, true power lies with the Senate. And within the Senate, the real power lies in personal relationships. And personal relationships are built on debt. You understand this, and you begin to buy into it. Your network of clients is growing. Senators are borrowing from you. Generals are asking you for funding. Those who owe you cannot vote against you, cannot take a stand against you, cannot speak out against you. You're financing election campaigns. You're saving men who would otherwise be condemned, and the men you save become bound to you. Debt is a shackle without chains, invisible, weightless, yet unbreakable. You're shackling Rome with this chain. Young Caesar is borrowing from you a lot. Before heading to Spain, his creditors can only be pacified with your guarantee. You are sitting at the same table with Pompey. Between them stands the equalizer, you, Crassus. The one who ends the argument, balances the scales, and is owed money by both. A triumvirate, the triumvirate. 3 men sit at that table. One represents money, one charisma, one victory. But while sitting at that table, you cannot see this. Money has blinded you. The people love the one who wins their hearts. You never try to win hearts. You have become a prisoner of the ceaseless flow of money. You're the richest man in Rome, but you're not the most powerful, and that difference is eating you up from the inside. Pompey is winning victories in the east. He's defeating Mithridates. He's clearing out the pirates. The city is watching him, cheering him on. Caesar is fighting in Gaul. Their letters are read with excitement in the Senate. Both have armies, stories, and the people's attention. What are you doing? You're putting out fires. You're acquiring property. You're making a lot of money. You're mentioned only when money is discussed. And every morning, at every Senate meeting, at every triumphal procession, you feel a little more acutely that this isn't enough. Rome measures victory by the sword, and now you're 46. You're becoming a consul. You're at the top. But being at the top isn't the same as being powerful. You're no longer just feeling this, you're realizing it. You realize it every morning when you wake up. There are temples in Rome bearing Pompey's name. Caesar's letters are being read from the Senate rostrum. When is your name mentioned? When settling accounts. That's not enough. It will never be enough. You become governor of Syria, and from there, you make a decision. Not really a decision, actually. A necessity. You launch a campaign against Parthia, against the most powerful empire in the east, beyond the Euphrates. Why? Because victory is needed. Because a name is needed. You must show your strength to everyone. Because right now, Caesar's name is being mentioned in the Senate. Pompey's name is being mentioned. Your name isn't. Money paid is forgotten. A war won goes down in history. You want to go down in history. You are 56 years old. You've grown old, but you're at the head of the army. 7 legions, over 40,000 soldiers. The legions are marching through the sands of Mesopotamia. Sand is everywhere, in your boots, in your eyes, in your throat. But this isn't your domain. You knew caves, you knew fires, you knew courtrooms and ledgers. You don't know the battlefield. Soldiering is learned in sand and blood. You started too late. Before setting out on the campaign, a tribune publicly curses you. Bad omens are being counted. The soldiers' morale is shaken, but you're going. Because taking a step back means losing, and you've never accepted defeat. You want that victory. Kari, a flat plain, no high ground, no shelter. Parthian archers, tens of thousands of them. On horseback, they fire relentlessly, swiveling their bows. When the arrows run out, camel caravans bring more. The legions form a sawtooth formation. The bronze shields glint in the light, but the arrows don't stop. They don't stop. They don't stop. Your son Publius dies. He had charged on horseback. He isn't coming back. They impale his head on a spear and hurl it toward the legions. You are the first to see him at the front of the army, under the sun beating down on his forehead. You don't say a word. The commanders suggest surrender. No, they demand it. The legions are on the brink of mutiny. You go to the enemy camp to negotiate terms. That camp becomes the place where everything ends. Whether it's a debate or a premeditated trap, the outcome remains the same. Rome's wealthiest man loses everything in the middle of that desert. 8,000 talents, vast estates, ledgers of debt. You can't take any of it beyond those sands. You leave this world just as empty-handed as you were when you were born. That night, in the enemy king's palace, there is a victory feast and a theatrical performance. The man Rome once deemed invincible, your great name, is reduced to nothing more than a mocked prop on an enemy stage, the audience applauds. And later in Rome, those dark legends begin to spread. They tell how. Because you never sated your appetite for that great wealth while alive. Your enemies mocked your endless greed. The legends whisper that the gold you love so much has choked you. Perhaps true, perhaps false. But the truth is this: the curtain is falling. All that splendor and greed fade away into the darkness of the desert. The end of Rome's richest man is recorded as history's cruelest irony. You've reached your goal. Now you, too, are among those whose names are written in history, not with a great victory, but with the tragedy of your greed. At 28, you were a man who had lost everything in that dark cave. You climbed to the pinnacle of Rome. You bought the world. But in the sands of that desert, you realized that the absolute power for which you had burned everything was, in fact, your own trap from the very beginning.